Welcome back to the Big Issue. And as always, it's an interactive program. You can reach me via two WhatsApp lines, 0549 986 996, 0549 986 996. You can also do so via 0550 585832, 0550 585832. For those of you who prefer social media and Twitter, you can reach me at Citi973. At Citi973, use the hashtag The Big Issue, hashtag The Big Issue, or you can reach me on my own Twitter handle at Godfrey Akoto-Boafo at East Sportsman. Gladly read your comments on the same hashtag. We're also streaming live on Facebook. Citi973 is our Facebook page, also on Citi TV GH. Do share the live stream and also leave your comments. And if you don't miss out, just visit our YouTube channel, CitiTube, CITITUB. Subscribe, very important when you get there. You can type in The Big Issue and you can catch some playback of this weekend's program. Okay, so let's come inside and then begin the conversation from a topic that has everybody worried. And some say the government does not sound worried, does not look worried, but a lot of people are worried. If you looked at the front pages this week, cement prices going up, egg prices going up by 100%. Importers are complaining, manufacturers are complaining. Every sector of the economy seems to have been affected by this, and this was further exacerbated by the news that Ghana's credit rating had been downgraded by Fitch from a B- to a triple C. This update follows Standard & Poor's downgrade as well of Ghana's foreign and local credit ratings with a to also a triple C with a negative economic outlook. The minority in Parliament has been speaking on this matter. We caught up with Dr. Kesalatu Forsin, who is the ranking member on the Finance Committee. He spoke about that. So we'll hear from him on what his thoughts are on the economy. We'll come in studio and have a conversation.
Unfortunately, the Ghanaian economy as we speak today is simply insolvent. We are bankrupt. That is what it is. Let no one deceive you with semantics. If Ghanaian economy happens to be a company, by now would have declared insolvency or complete bankruptcy. Things are in a bad shape. The C that you are seeing, in fact, the rating agencies are even late in the day. Moody's is the one that I can say that they were somewhat they kept with time to come early. But Fitch is late in the day. The only correcting things that they should have done earlier. In fact, our bond spreads are rating our bonds far in the C status. So what we see that these guys have done, Fitch have done, is a little bit too late. They are trying to correct what should have been done long ago.
So that was Kesalatu Forsin, Doctor. He's the ranking member on the Finance Committee in Parliament. The government has also responded. They expressed their disappointment by S&P's decision to downgrade the economy despite what it calls some bold policies. We'll hear about that, and then we'll also hear from economist and lecturer at the University of Ghana, Professor Lord Mensah, who has warned that the country's inflation rate will continue to soar if government does not take pragmatic steps to contain it.
The government is disappointed by S&P's decision to downgrade Ghana despite the bold policies implemented in 2022 to address macro-fiscal challenges and debt sustainability, which have been significantly exacerbated by the impact of these global external shocks on the economy. Governments will continue to be proactive in addressing the impact of these external and domestic headwinds on the economy and on the lives and livelihoods of Ghanaians. Government has implemented key revenue and expenditure measures, including the 30% cut in discretionary expenditures. The delays in the passage of key revenue measures introduced in the 2022 budget affected revenue's performance in the first half of the year. However, all the revenue measures introduced in the 2022 budget, including the review of the MDA fees and charges bill, the tax exemptions bill, the e-levy bill, have all now been promulgated by Parliament. These fiscal measures are now in full implementation mode to support our fiscal and debt sustainability policies. The government is committed and is confident that it will successfully emerge from these challenges in the shortest possible time, as we have demonstrated the track record to do so in the Akufo-Addo-led government. Our current engagement with the International Monetary Fund for a program incorporating our enhanced domestic program is expected to support our drive to restore and sustain macroeconomic stability, debt sustainability, and promote growth and job creation whilst ensuring social protection to achieve our vision of a Ghana beyond aid.
The trajectory over the years has been that it's always going up. Every year it crosses a district mark. So a district mark means that maybe we find ourselves this year at 1. We'll be within the 1.8 to 1.9. The next year we'll be going to 2 if you plot the dynamics. And it tells you that, fine, we've been able to manage it within the year.
For some Forex Bureau operators who spoke on anonymity, the situation is already having a negative impact on their businesses.
Assuming that your capital inflow, if let's assume that I'm buying about $10,000 at the rate of maybe about 6.5, which is 65,000 Ghana cedi. And now, since the depreciation, now I'm supposed to use more money to buy the same $10,000 at about, let's say, 82,000. Look at the price differentiation. That is normally affects our business, and it doesn't go well for the business itself.
With the forex trading, depreciation of the cedis will make your capital very useless, because you cannot, what you were able to buy before, you cannot buy. Before, the dollar was 6.5. If your capital, let's say, is about 65,000, you can buy $10,000. Now dollars is about 8.5, meaning that 65,000 cannot even buy close to $9,000, which has kicked you in some way or the other out of business.
Professor Lord Mensah is, however, calling on governments to implement some pragmatic measures so that the local currency does not cross the 10 Ghana cedi mark by the end of the year.
Of course, I mean, the cedi must cross it will cross the 10 Ghana cedis per dollar, I foresee, because the IMF program that we have, it's not going to yield for now. And then also, getting to the end of the year, there will be pressure in the demand of the dollar. You know, what we are experiencing has to do with the structure of the economy. But then there are seasonal demands that we've not taken into consideration. The seasonal demand, like when you're getting into Christmas, you know, Ghana is an import-driven economy. Businesses are going to build up buffers to meet the demand of their goods on the market during the Christmas. So they're going to put pressure. And so what we see now is just, the structures the economic structures that is causing this depreciation. But once the seasonal demand sets in, we're going to go up more. At that time, what was the inflation rate? What was the foreign exchange rate? The inflation rate was around 12 point something, or the 14 thereabout. And now it's 30 something. And you don't expect to remain the same grade. Anybody that tells you that he's surprised that we've been downgraded, it's a lie. Let me tell you. The dynamics, everything it tells you. Why would they be disappointed? The data is clear. I mean, whatever indicators that is supposed to downgrade you is there. And all these economic indicators we are talking goes into their model. And that is what they have used. And so they shouldn't be disappointed. What is disappointment about this?
But from your point of view, what would you want government to do?
Well, for now, they have to come out with serious expenditure cutting measures. You know, I always put our expenditures into two. I categorize them. So that was Dr. Lord Mensah, the University of Ghana, sharing his thoughts on Ghana's current economic circumstances. I'll be having this conversation with, as always, a packed panel. My good friend Dr. Edu Susakwadia from the University of Ghana will be with us. Member of Parliament for Tamale North, Alasan Suini, will also join us. Yawapia Alate, Financial Advisory Partner from Deloitte Ghana. They've also been talking about the economy this week. I'll tell you what they've been saying. Franklin Kujo, President of Imani Africa, will also join us. And in studio with me is Dr. Antoinette Sibudaku, Executive Director of the Dankwa Institute. Dr. Sibudaku, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us on the show. How have you been?
I'm good. It's a pleasure to be here.
Always good to
My first time on issues.
Yes, I've heard you quite a bit, but first time on my program. I hope we are able to see more of you henceforth after we are done today. Speaking of Deloitte and what they've been saying with regards to the economy, I'll bring in Yawapia Alate to have a bit of a chat. Yeah, morning.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning again. Just a few thoughts, though. What have been the concerns of Deloitte this week with regards to, in your review, for instance, of the media budget review?
Yes, so I think we summarize it in a report. Usually, when the government presents the annual budget or the mid-year budget, we do a summary with our views and comments. So Deloitte presented our views and comments in a summary. And I think before I go to our views and comments, I will just comment on the economy in general, some of the issues in the context of our global development. So as you all know, the global economy is facing challenges, and I think they are unprecedented challenges driven by two main factors. So the sustained effect of COVID-19 and then also the Russia and Ukraine war. This has affected three factors, and the three main factors are food, fuel, and financial conditions. The food prices that we are seeing in our current inflation rate, which is roughly about 32%, is driven partly by the increased price of grains and fertilizers on the international market. And then we have the fuel. Of course, we know that oil and gas prices have gone up significantly, driven largely by the Russia-Ukraine war. And then now we have financial conditions, and then the financial conditions also driven by the fact that the advanced economies are struggling, and so they do not have funds available for dependent economies like ours. The reason why Ghana has become so vulnerable in the context of the global challenges is the fact that structurally, as you've heard from other economists, we have a structural problem. And the structural problem I will explain in two ways. So first, Ghana used to have agriculture and industry as a mainstay of our economy, driving our economy. In recent years, we've seen services sector as the driver of our economy. So it means our agriculture sector has been declining and industry has actually contracted in the last 2 years. So a lot of industries have closed down, and then we are all having challenges because of issues like BUSO and then depreciation local currency. And then if you go further, you realize on the public sector debt, our external debt is currently held by foreigners. So about 52% of our public debt is held by foreigners. And so when we become vulnerable and the economy goes through the challenges that we are currently going through, we would have these external investors pull out their funds. When they pull out their funds, the effect is going to be twofold. So your reserve is going to decline and your local currency is going to depreciate. So these are the factors that has caused the problem that we are facing now. And let me go to the recent downgrades. So the downgrade by S&P, Fitch, and others started sometime last year. And I'll recount the factors that they outlined in their downgrades. So the first downgrade, they recounted four main factors. The four main factors was the fact that fiscal consolidation was slowing because of the widening deficit. The second was the fact that we had a low revenue base. The third was our rising public debt. And then the fourth reason was the fact that the government in power does not have a clear majority in parliament. This was before E-levy went to parliament and we had all the challenges. So these credit ratings agencies pointed out these four factors. Today we ask ourselves these four reasons: slowdown in fiscal consolidation, low revenue base, high public debt, and lack of clear majority in parliament. Have we been able to resolve them? The answer is a clear no. So your situation has further been exacerbated by the fact that you do not have access to the international markets. Our budget has always been supported by the Eurobond. So we go to the international market to borrow. We are not able to go to the international market to borrow. So these four factors, we are not able to resolve them. Now we have limited access to the international market or no access at all. So it means you'll be better downgraded. So this is what has caused where we find ourselves now. So I guess this is just in context before I go to our comments and analysis of the budget.
Yeah, I'll, since you've opened up this part of the conversation, let me just ask you a few questions. You talk about the four concerns. Let's talk about the borrowing, for instance. As somebody who studies that space, what are your thoughts on the government's borrowing strategy over the past 3 years, the constant return to the Eurobond market, and how it has gone about it?
Yeah, so I think for us, we found ourselves in a situation where it was possible to go to the international market. And I say it was possible to go to the international market because we are cleaning our books. The cleaning of our books happened because we had just come out of an IMF program. The economic indicators were looking so good. GDP was growing at an average of 7%. Our inflation was single digit, and so many other factors. And we managed to reduce or restructure some of our debt after the IMF program. So I guess for us, we got carried away by the fact that, of course, we were credit worthy. And when we go to the Euro bond, we get an oversubscription about 5 times. What we didn't realize was that, or we didn't know, was some of the unforeseen circumstances that came to hit us. One being COVID, and second being the Russia-Ukraine war. So we had borrowed so much, and unfortunately for us, some unforeseen circumstances came to hit our economy. And so our situation has been worsened by the fact that we had borrowed and we leveraged the economy significantly, and as a result, we became vulnerable. And so what we are seeing now is just as a result of some structural problems that we had in our economy, exacerbated by the fact that we went to the international market to borrow too much. And the reason why our problem even got worse is because we were borrowing at commercial rates. We were not borrowing at concessionary rates. Historically, when we were not lower middle income, we used to have a lot of concessionary facilities. We do not have a lot of concessionary loan facilities because, of course, our economy got upgraded in a way, and then we had to go to the international market to borrow. But I tell you, we were borrowing at approximately 9%. Some of the concessionary loans that we still have in our books today, some are as low as 1%, some are at about 3%. So if today you are borrowing at 9%, a dollar of $2 billion, of $3 billion, you are borrowing at 9%, instead of a concessionary loan facility at 1% or 3%, you have a significant payment of interest. Let me put it in context that the Monetary Policy Committee report in the first quarter, Ghana was expected to spend about 10 billion Ghana cedis on interest payments alone in the first quarter of the year. By the end of the first quarter of this year, we have spent 10.6 billion Ghana cedis on interest payments. Why is that the case? Because our loans or our debts were significantly composed of foreign currency denominated debts. And so when the local currency depreciates, we ended up paying about 6% percentage points higher than what we had anticipated to spend. By the end of the first quarter, once again, our total compensation and interest payments alone made up 108% of our total revenue. So we spent 100%, 108% of our total revenue in the first quarter of the year on interest payments and compensation alone. Interest payments making up about 63%. Godfrey, we can't continue like this. This is unsustainable. And I think that is what actually accelerated our discussions with IMF.
And in your reports, when I look at the part that deals with, since we just spoke about debt, you are worried by the increased domestic debt issuance, which highlights the existing competition between government and businesses for funds available in the domestic markets. Can you elaborate?
Good. So I think the fact is what we have as, let's say, them are the facts. And in a sense, what you are saying is the last couple of months, Treasury rate is about 14%, 15%, and 16%. Today, the T-bill rate is about 26%. Mm-hmm. What that means to any investor, even individuals like you and me, is very simple. For you to give money to Godfrey and associates who are operating in the market, who are importing goods sell at, let's say, 30%, I'll comfortably give it to the government at 26% and avoid the risk of non-payment by that individual. So even financial institutions in Ghana are comfortably giving money to government and not giving it to businesses. So funds, our available funds for businesses are now being channeled to support government budgets. And that's a worrying trend, because if we really want to come out of COVID and the sustained effect of COVID, we need to accelerate demand. We need to accelerate aggregate demand. And that only happens when you support the engine of growth, that's SMEs, to increase their operations, to increase their activities. If government is now taking the money from business and SMEs, we are going to have a worrying trend going forward. And I think that's a significant concern. And that's partly driven by the fact that we do not have access to the international market again. So government will have to borrow domestically, and that is taking money away from businesses.
You are also advising government to intensify its implementation of programs designed to expand and improve the economy, such as the Agric Modernization Program, industrialization and supporting businesses to take advantage of the after. But you've also just spoken about services overtaking agric and industry, which are two sectors that, if I look at your numbers again, have received significant injection of funds from the government over the past 4 years. We are looking at Planting for Food and Jobs, and then we are looking at the One District, One Factory project. It doesn't balance for me.
Yeah, so that's a very good point and a very good assessment. So I think the question is, all this investment in agriculture, the question to ask ourselves is, which part of agriculture are we supporting? So are we supporting primary production? Are we supporting value addition to agriculture? The problem we've had in the past is that we have supported primary production. And so when we finish the primary production, the other aspect of the value chain is lost. We will produce so much, and I guess we recall at some point the farmers have produced so much, and these goods were getting rotten on the farm. Because these programs do not also support the value chain. How do you support logistics? How do you carry these products from wherever they are produced into the business or to the central business areas where there is significant demand, and even to export? Because if we're exporting some of our agricultural products that we had supported through our Planting for Food and Jobs programs, if we were exporting, you would have managed issues like our foreign currency issues that we are having now. But we have supported the primary or private production and forgotten about the other aspect of the value chain. And I think that's where we have a problem. Secondly, on the industry sector, we've had this issue of depreciating local currency. And so some of our industries also import significant raw material externally. So as we are importing and local currency depreciating, it becomes very expensive to operate. And I tell you, our industry sector has been contracting significantly because of the decline in production in our mining subsector of the economy. The mining sector that should be taking advantage of COVID, because during the COVID period, there was significant rise in gold prices. At the time, our mining companies were going through what we call care and maintenance. A lot of them have stopped production. Why? Because we in Ghana do not control some of these mining companies and the operations. We do not have significant majority. A lot of the decisions are taken by foreign firms that own them. So the problem that we have in the industry and agriculture sector are just in two fronts. In the agriculture sector, we are just supporting the primary production and not supporting other aspects of it.
Okay, so Yao, we've lost Yao Pierre Latti's connection. We'll try and get him back. We're trying to. Okay, he's back. Yes, Yao, if you could make your final point again. We missed out on that.
Yeah, so I think what I said was that the problem we've had in agriculture and then the industry sector is, one, the agriculture sector, we have flagship programs and excellent programs that are supporting primary production, but those programs do not support other aspects of the agricultural value chain. So after we've done the primary production, do we have programs to support storage? Do we have programs to support logistics to transport them to the cities and also to export these products to the international markets? I don't think our programs support these agricultural companies or these agricultural aspects of the economy to that extent. Our neighboring countries are exporting stuff like tomatoes and others to us. What programs are they running to be able to export these products to us? We should also ensure that some of the flagship programs we have in the agriculture sector are supporting exports. And we would have managed issues like our foreign currency or our local currency that's depreciating against major currencies. And on the industry sector, I said that we have issues in the industry sector because of issues like the depreciating local currency, as well as the mining subsector of the industry sector, because the mining subsector has been declining, partly because a lot of the mining companies are doing what we call care and maintenance. They have stopped production, even though gold prices are so high. We are not taking advantage of that because the decisions are not made by government, but are made by these foreign multinationals.
You are quite optimistic about some of the government's measures working. If I look at your take on the 2022 macroeconomic framework. For instance, you say that with continuous monetary tightening and weakening supply-side price pressures, you expect inflation to stabilize in the medium term. However, still above Bank of Ghana's long-term target of between 6 and 10%. In July, we just hit a record of 31%. Are you still optimistic?
Yeah, so we are optimistic in a sense because part of the problem that we've had is as a result of the challenges that we had with governments not being able to raise revenue. And so when you do have a problem like that, one, you have issues with your foreign currency, and you also have issues with governments not spending in strategic sectors to support the economy. We just believe that over the period, we would have issues like the food prices being managed by seasonality. The issue the issue with food inflation is that the seasonality of crops come in to manage the food inflation. So, for instance, you have season for mangoes, you have season for other food items. So, when we get the season of those food items, you realize that there are so much available on the market and the price go down. If our non-food inflation is increasing, we will have a problem because things like housing and then also stuff like rent and others, when they are increasing significantly, there are things that you can't manage with seasonality because there's no season for housing, there's no season for rent, but there's season for food. And so we are asking government to bring policies to manage the non-food inflation. If some of the programs that we've highlighted here are able to manage the non-food inflation aspect, once we have seasonality reducing the impact of food inflation, then you also have the benefits of also non-food inflation that has been well managed.
You are quite excited by the DBG, that's the Development Bank Ghana's coming into existence, and the YouStart program. That optimism is not shared by many. Some are asking where even the money will come from for something like the YouStart in the first place to help it solve some of these problems that we are facing, particularly in the employment and revenue creation side. Why are you so optimistic for these two projects?
Yes, so I think we further recommended to government that in their enhanced domestic program and their engagement with IMF, these are some of the programs that should be emphasized significantly, because we don't expect IMF to push back on programs like that, because these are programs that are expected to increase or accelerate your recovery from COVID. So YouStart, for instance, you are creating jobs for the youth, you are supporting SMEs. The Development Bank is also geared to support SMEs. These are what we call the engine of growth. If our enhanced domestic program will have significant policies and well thought out policies around this, we expect this to be welcomed by the IMF, and we will have programs that are geared towards supporting SMEs, supporting business under these programs.
Okay, so I will let you hold on for me because I will come back and then we will try and get into the four big points that you have and see. Of course, that on the no clear majority side, it's not going to change anytime soon. But the other three, we will try and discuss that. But I also have in the studio, like I said, the Member of Parliament for Tamale North, Alhassan Suini. Suini, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. And from the University of Ghana, Dr. Patrick Assuming has also joined us. Dr. Assuming, morning.
Good morning.
Yes. Thank you for joining us. Let me come to Dr. Assuming before I come in studio to talk to Dr. Shibudako and Suhini. I'm sure you've heard Yawa Pialati from the financial advisory side of Deloitte Ghana. Again, we've had downgrades. The government says it's disappointed because it has implemented what it calls bold policies. The economy, however, seems not to be responding to these so-called bold policies, quite obviously. What's happening?
Okay. Good morning and good morning to my fellow panelists. So, I mean, first of all, the downgrade that we've seen, in particular the one by S&P, is a little bit more damaging.
How so?
Earlier on, when the other rating agencies were downgrading Ghana, S&P didn't really downgrade us, especially in January. late December and early January and February. So it appears that they seem to have a little bit more confidence in some of the new measures that the government had put in the 2022 budget. So it appears that they adopted a wait-and-see attitude to see exactly how these additional measures will help fix the public finances. So you fast forward to July 2022, and the mid-year budget has been read, and the returns from those things have been seen. And it's become obvious that those additional measures haven't really made the impact that one would have expected. So that tells us that whatever we have been doing for 6 months, saying that we are going to help, we are going to consolidate our public finances and ensure that we are in a better position to manage our debt and return to the international financial market, they haven't really worked well. So I think that the downgrade is just a reflection, or it's a message to the government that whatever we've been doing has not really worked, or is not enough. For me, the response, well, obviously, when we are downgraded, you expect the government to be disappointed. But I think, in addition to being disappointed, maybe the response would have been, what more are we going to do? Because whatever it is that, if you read the government response, whatever the government recounted was already known at the time the downgrade was being done. The downgrade was announced. It was already known that the government is doing A, B, and C. So it's a clear indication that whatever we are doing is not working. And we need to do a lot more. So I think from my point of view, that would have been a more appropriate response than simply saying, we are disappointed and we were doing A, B, and C, because that one is already known. As to whether the economy is responding to the measures of the government, well, if you look at the real side of the economy and the measures that we have heard since the last budget was read, we haven't really heard anything new in terms of things to strengthen the real side of the economy. So most of the measures we've heard are things to help fix the issues with our government finances. When you look at what was in the budget, the main new measure, there were revenue measures, and then subsequently what the finance minister announced sometime in March. There were some additional revenue measures and some expenditure measures, the 30% discretionary and the other things there, based on public sector travel. So why would we expect that something new will change in terms of the structure of the real side of the economy when there has been nothing? The government is just, usually they just recount what they've been doing. One of the problems is that, we seem to count what we have done by what we have spent. We have to shift focus to what we have achieved. So if you say you spend so much on planting for food and jobs, and you spend them in the wrong sections, or the efficiency of what we are spending, or the value we are getting for the spending is not coming, it won't change much. So I think, when Yao was speaking, particularly when he was speaking about the planting for food and jobs, so you have an agric minister who will always tell you that it's very successful. And then at the same time, we've been seeing food prices going up for more than 12 months. Even when, we haven't even reached the single digit, we realized that food inflation was still going up. So it appears that instead of looking at the whole value chain and different aspects of what affects food prices, you may have focused on providing seedlings or providing fertilizers. So when the output comes, what happens? What are we doing with first agro-processing, and what are we doing with the logistics, the roads. So, sometimes in some respects, what the Agric Minister may say, some of them may be true in terms of some of the items. But the problem is that when you produce so much and the roads are so bad and fuel costs are going up, transport fares are going up, and it still costs a lot to transport what you produce to the marketplace, you still see prices going up. So I don't think in the last 2 years I've seen any dramatic or anything which is dramatically new in terms of the real side of the economy for me to see any change.
But I have a question, Dr. Suming, just before you go on. With what you've described, how much of these situations can the government actually control? Because, for instance, the Agric Minister in his defense says, look, we are producing the food, but there is also excess profiteering on the market. You talk about the issues with high fuel prices, of course, because the global supply chain issues that we've had for quite some time now when it comes to even moving things around. Fertilizer has been affected in that regard. You also talk about the fact that, well, they said they would do A, B, C, and D over this period of time. They are unable to do those things, and nothing realistically has changed. So the question then becomes, well, maybe they do have the right policies, but it seems that a chunk of how to achieve those things might not necessarily be in their power. Does that sound reasonable?
There are some things the government doesn't control. But if you do policy and you say, oh, I'm going to give fertilizers, I'm going to improve production, and then you haven't done anything to address the problems with our roads, and if you look at how the policy is communicated, which aspect of the policy said we are going to address the issue with food storage? So when we talk about seasonality, you can have periods of bumper harvest, and then the next season food prices are up. So you can say in the immediate term, in terms of they can't control too much what happens in terms of crude oil prices, but they can control how we build systems so that from farm gate to the markets, there are some investment. So if you look at P&J, a big chunk of, so they are providing seedlings and they are providing fertilizers. A lot of it is just policy support. At the end of the day, they are still giving these to farmers. So there's a signaling value there, what we want to do. What is the signaling value of what we want to do with logistics and storage? So we do see that in terms of the road construction, a lot of roads have been constructed, but we have to see what is the strategy of linking the road construction to our major food baskets.
Okay.
Like maybe if you look at where the regions that produce most of our food, a BA or Western or Ashanti, some parts of Ashanti, what is the strategy behind making sure that when we produce, they make it to the road? Because look, if you travel in some places, so if you travel between Tamale and Boga, for instance, in some season you see watermelon on the roadside and getting rotten. So you might say that it is not all government doing, but the same way that the government feels that even though there are private individuals who are into agriculture and the food production, it could also see what measures it can take place, it can put in place to ensure that that chain, that value chain is the full value chain is covered. So that is something that I could have controlled.
Okay, all right. Just hold on for me. Hold on for me. I understand. I'll come back to you, Dr. Sumi. Let me come in. I want to hear from Dr. Tiwudako. She's been making some notes on this matter. I want to take things bit by bit. I want to hear everybody before I take my first break. What else can the government do? I guess that has to be the question, because nothing seems to be working. The numbers are there. Government missed its revenue target. Total expenditure from January to June was 2.8 billion greater than its targeted expenditure. interest payments are up, everything is up. What else can the government do? And it does look, for some observers and critics say, it actually does look like the government is not interested in doing too much right now.
There's no government that would say they are not interested in doing too much right now. You will do it, and you would continue do it, and that's exactly what the government is doing. But you see, there's what I call constraints or issues that they fundamentally crowd you in. Okay, they kind of keep eating away the gains that you make, and I think that has been the major problem that has faced government during these times. So when we got the earlier downgrades at the beginning of the year, it already limited government's ability to now go outside to the external market to even bring debt to GDP ratios were rising. So certain situations were going to follow, and if government was even going in and trying to address these issues, it meant that you needed more money to address these issues. And then came the war. And now your foreign exchange has to go into, because the people that were supplying fuel, Russia has cut down the European market. So the European market now goes to some of the people that we used to go to. It becomes competitive, you know. So at the end of the day, you also have to make sure that if earlier on you had a certain payment terms with them, now you have to up your game. If not, you would be down there on the people, I mean, based on the supply or on the rate of who they give to first. If you have more money, you go and get it. So at the end of the day, that was also a challenge that entered the market. But you see, for me, I've always said that we have structural issues. And this is something that we have discussed day in and day out. And every government that comes in says they are solving structural issues. You're trying to. What are the structural issues that we are talking about? What are the fundamental structural issues that we are talking about? And I say that this speaks to the issues that we are currently facing. We have a dollarized economy, an economy that wants to price everything in dollars first. Okay, so you go and ask for the price of a house, and it's quoted in dollars, and you automatically do your calculation. And it is something that has historically gone along with us, and we keep going along with it. I want to arrive at a time when that leaves our system, where, like, if you go to a francophone country, even though the French economy has a hold by making sure that they control the currency, and that's why they don't face a kind of inconsistencies and stability, because they hold it in their treasury for them, and they are able to. When you go and you ask for something, the CFA is what comes to mind. You understand? Even if it's mentioned in millions and millions, it's what comes in mind. But how come that automatically in Ghana, we always seem to mention the dollar first? It also causes that speculation where every time there's a slight change in the forex, people then start thinking that I'm losing my money, so I quickly need to convert all my cedis back into dollar. And then the speculation even feeds more into the depreciation of the currency. So it even goes faster than it usually would have gone. And I think that is something that we have to fight. We have to, and I keep asking, what structures are we then going to put in place to make sure that the dollar economy is minimized? That we have that confidence in our own city to say that we would price things in city, and we would expect that so if you have put a house together and you spend 2 million cedis in putting that house together, you spend 2 million cedis. You should be able to look at a price range and ask yourself, what profit would you make if you want to sell the house, and price the house in cedis? How are we going to get there? And for me, these are the structural things that we need to look at. We need to ask ourselves, how do we do that? Because if not, the consistent pressure, whenever we are downgraded, whenever we are faced with a global crisis, whenever we go through, because now you can't predict what happens next. We never predicted COVID. Neither did we predict the Russian-Ukraine impasse. So at the end of the day, it means if we cannot address these structural issues at home, whenever we are hit by these external shocks, it tends to even hit us more. Is there something else that can be done? I think a lot has been done. I think what has happened is all the investments that have been made over the years till now, is supposed to feed into addressing these structural problems. And for me, I always talk about human development capacity being very, very key, okay, to ensuring that we achieve certain growth rates. Unfortunately, investment in human development, as the Free SHS has done, as the investment in TVET, in technical and vocational education, are things which you won't realize the profit immediately. You will see the results and the positive benefits in probably 10, 15 years to come, when you see a whole generation that has achieved a certain level of more entrepreneurial skills, can go into technical, that kind of thing, now being able to contribute to the growth. And that is where the issue is. Because in the meantime, whilst we are waiting to realize those benefits, we get hit by these shocks. So it starts to eat into the gains that you think you have achieved or you've managed to get. You understand me? So this is one thing. We've invested in rail sector, in road sector. Now these are all significant investments that are supposed to solve structural problems. But unfortunately, when you get hit by an external shock, it negates the gains of this immediately. Because at the end of the day, even though you are investing in road and rail, you also needed to get more capital to invest in what I call the connector, to ensure that the roads and the rail that you are investing in is actually delivering the end result. Okay, so it's unfortunate that even after recovering from COVID, 2021 started to be a good year. We entered into 2022, a war came. Now all forex has to be, we don't get a chance to even show up reserves. Forex has to go to quickly make sure that we don't get fuel shortages. And fuel shortages is not just about the fact that you don't get fuel for your car, but it means it also affects our electricity. Because for us, hydro is not the only way we generate electricity. So if we get shortages in those imports, it means we also can't run electricity. And you know the electricity, exactly, it affects industry. It kills small businesses. So it's a whole value chain that you then, as a government, have to start asking yourself that, what would I prioritize at this point? I'll prioritize fuel and I'll prioritize power to make sure that at least the economy is able to survive through those things. Unfortunately, then it has an effect on other things, because then you don't have money to keep doing what? To keep ensuring that the value of your cedi does not depreciate. Because if you are using your forex, you don't have anything to hold back to ensure that your money does not. So at the end of the day, these are the issues that I think we would have to consistently address. I speak a lot to internal revenue generation, and at a point people were calling me the e-levy madam. The issues about internal revenue, I think, has been neglected for long. It actually demands that we take intentional measures. And for me, I think the impasse in Parliament has not also helped the situation, whereby if we have all accepted and come to a conclusion that internal revenue generation over the years has been very low, and that domestic revenue, especially if you look at the domestic revenue rate to GDP is low, how do we go forward? How do we solve it? How do we make sure that we can increase our domestic revenue? And because now we are going to have to look internally. We've been cut off from the external market. How else are you going to support your budget if you don't increase your revenues? I also think that we need to make that intentional effort where the planting for food and jobs, as he said, we have properly put in export produce, things that would then fetch us more foreign currency. Because for years and years, we have been so totally dependent on import. We're actually an import-driven economy, in the sense that besides the imports that we bring in, even to support our industries, we actually import a lot more consumables. What are the non-essential things that we keep importing? Can we cut some of them out? And I think these are some of the structural things we've gotten so used to over the years. And there's always that rhetoric of, we will do it. We are doing it. We are getting there. But I think this calls for actual intentional, and actual drastic measures that say we will have to do all of these things, because we don't have a choice now, in order to make sure that we at least continue to keep the economy going. Cut down non-essential exports. There are things that we can do. We can continue. We have all the flagship programs that are running. and they will bring us benefits. If we are saying that IMF coming in would not stop some of these flagship programs, it's also a step in a positive step. It's a right direction, because I think cutting down on some of these flagship programs will automatically take money from people's pockets, and that is something that you don't want to do, because then you start increasing people's hardship. You increase expenditure on food, expenditure on people paying school fees, and etc. And those are things that you don't want to do. I listened when Yao was speaking for yes, and I was especially concerned, and I agreed with him when he talked about the fact that how have we made sure that the end of the programs that are being delivered, that so much money has been spent on, how are we making sure that that end result is achieved? You know, because when you face all these downgrades and then the dialogue and the discussion changes, if you are not careful, you lose the conversation. You tend to forget what you are supposed to continue doing to ensure that the end result. So what was the initial thing about Planting for Food and Jobs? What was the end result that we wanted to do? What was it about 1D, 1F that we wanted to do? We wanted to make sure that we've cut down on imports. I mean, it's very interesting, and I was so happy to see that Commander Sugar Factory is up and producing sugar. Does it mean that we can cut down on a certain amount of sugar that we bring in? You know, so I think these are some of the linkages that he was talking about, that going forward, we should have to intentionally keep monitoring to make sure that it is happening, and see how this translates into us conserving some of our foreign exchange. There is definitely some bright light at the end of the tunnel, but it's going to have to mean that you take intentional effort, if it means sector by sector, intentional efforts to ensure that we can see that bright light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah.
Opening thoughts from Dr. Antoinette. I have a couple of questions that I will raise, and we'll hear Suhini as well. But first, we have to take a quick break. Franklin Kujo is also waiting at the end of the other line. Biggie should be right back. Welcome back to The Big Issue on Citi TV and also on Citi 97.3 FM. Very, very, very sound discussion on the struggling economy, quite obviously. Just struggling, needs help. And we can only hope and contribute in whichever ways we can to getting out of that situation. So the next matter on the agenda is the Office of the Special Prosecutor. It's been around for some time now, and people have been asking what they've been doing. Well, they got a new boss not too long ago, Kisia Jabing, and he's been working. This week they issued a report. Basically, the report dealt with a member of the Council of State, Madam Eunice Jacqueline Boa Asumahin, and her company, La Bianca, who were accused by the Office of the Special Prosecutor of engaging in corruption-related offences. The Office of the Special Prosecutor reported that they had recovered an amount of 1 million Ghana cedis. This was recovered as a shortfall of revenue arising from the issuance of what the OSP calls unlawful customs advance, meant to be duties paid to the state following the importation of frozen foods owned by La Bianca company, which is linked to Madame Boa Asuma Hina. She's also, she used to be on the board of directors of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. Now, after this, we had a response from the Commissioner of Customs under the GRA, Colonel Richard Kwejo Damwa, who accused the Special Prosecutor of peddling falsehood to tarnish his image. So we'll hear from, I want to hear Colonel Damwa and what he has to say, and then we'll come in studio and try and look at what the Special Prosecutor has been doing, whether it's within his powers, because all those questions have come up. Is he supposed to be able to do this? We've heard from, for instance, the Chamber of Freight and Trade and its president, who say, well, this is the norm. La Bianca hasn't done anything. We've heard from Samson Awingobit and his people says La Bianca is a company in good standing, and that these so-called offenses that have been committed are actually part of the daily activities of every major importer in this country. So let's just hear Colonel Damwa on what he had to say, and then we'll come in studio and we'll be joined by Vitus Azim, anti-corruption activist, long-time anti-corruption activist, to have this conversation. So let's hear Colonel Damwa quickly.
La Bianca Company Limited commenced operations in 2014 and its
report purporting or coming from the Office of the Special Prosecutor trying to indict the Deputy Commissioner of Operations and myself. And anybody who has read that report very well will know the basis of that. And luckily for me, God is always on my side. Before that report came, that person had made a statement to some people who had come to them. He was going to publish something that will discredit me, and he will do that. And I even sent people to go and tell him that he's a small boy. I'm older than him. I have lived a meaningful life. If he attempts to destroy me, it won't be easy for him. People have tried it. I have survived, and this one too, I'll survive. All that happened. One of the reasons was because of Mr. Akurugu. He wanted Mr. Akurugu to be seconded to his office, and I said no. Mr. Akurugu is a customs officer, primarily employed to do customs work. And he is to partner Mr. Akutofachin in that office, African Continental Free Trade Area. He deals with tariffs and valuation. And therefore, I cannot second him to the office of the Special Prosecutor.
Colonel retired Kweju Damwa maintains that the customs officials followed due process in offering a 5 to 10% reduction of the values for frozen products that La Bianca had imported into the country.
But if you read it very well, there's nothing in it. It's hollow. It's actuated by malice. And those who are behind it, they know themselves. They know themselves. They've tried it several times. It is not working, and it won't work. I'm ready for any prosecution. That's what he must do. Not to say that they should do further investigations up to 2017. Up to 2015, I have letters written by Deputy Commissioner Demis Agavo granting similar things. And I produced them when he called me.
This is one of the most bizarre videos I have seen in my almost 15 years of working as a journalist. And
are you sure you didn't see what's the air conditioned man? What's the company?
Oh, no, not.
Oh, why have I forgotten?
Yes, I forgotten his name as well. But I heard that one. Yes. But like I said, we've been joined by a long-time anti-corruption activist, Vitus Azim. Good morning, Mr. Azim.
Yeah, good morning.
Thank you for making time for us on the big issue, as always.
You're
so,
welcome.
like I said, this matter came up this weekend. One would have expected that the response, of course, from the Customs Division would have been through their lawyers, their legal department, somewhere outlining what the law says and what they have done, rather than the very personalized retort from the Commissioner of Customs. And like I said, we are hoping that there is, after this, a legal response, because the Office of the Special Prosecutor was very specific. Now, a couple of things have come up on this matter that I think need dealing with. And I'm going to read from the LI that sets up the Office of the Special Prosecutor, LI 2374. LI 2374. I'm going to read from Section 31, which spells out what the OSP is mandated to do on the prevention of corruption. Just so that, because there have also been questions around whether he has the powers to do some of the things he does and why the report was even published in the first place. So quickly, let me just do that. 31.1 says the office may receive, collect, and collate reports, documents, materials, complaints, allegations, information and intelligence to undertake the following measures to prevent corruption. A. Analysis of the risk of corruption. B. Anti-corruption programs. C. Anti-corruption assessment of legislation and draft legislation. D. Providing a provision of information in relation to persons applying for or holding a position in the ministries, departments, and agencies. E. Provision of information to the Public Services Commission or other legal entities. J. Education and information of the public. G, which is quite informative, publicizing detected acts of corruption, and H, other corruption measures provided by law. Then it says 2, the office shall identify the causes that advance corruption to facilitate the prevention of corruption, including A, deficiencies in regulatory enactments, regulations, or procedures. B, deficiencies in administration of instructions, including lack of internal control mechanisms or deficient mechanisms. Then again, you say, if you go down, it says on some of the things that they are supposed to investigate: individual interest, including greed, lack of ethicalness and legal awareness, and B, external influences, including public attitude, culture, and traditions. So I'm reading this just so that you understand the role of the Office of the Special Prosecutor and some of the powers that they have. So in fact, it looks like if when you are going to get a job with the ministries, departments, and agencies, they can provide information about you, whether you are fit for the role or not. Whether you are fit for the role or not. So quite extensive power. But let me come to Mr. Azim. How did you take, 1, the report, and 2, the response that has come from the Commissioner of Customs?
Well, the report was not surprising. These things keep coming up all the time. In fact, a lot of it do not come into the public domain. But we know past investigations, I think ANAS has done something on customs. The reports that Ghana Integrity Initiative has been releasing on a more or less an annual basis, Global Corruption Barometer. These reports have always put customs very close to the top of the institutions that are perceived to be corrupt. Apart from that, you interact with importers and you hear complaints about what they do. Even allegations of people going to these customs bonds houses and taking things out in the night to avoid the necessary duties and all that. So it wasn't surprising that this thing has come up. But as for the action from the commissioner, I say it was unfortunate and uncalled for, because, you see, a point is made, and that's the problem that we have most of the time. An allegation is made against you, instead of taking it up and defending it, explaining why you think it is wrong, that you have not done anything wrong, you personalize the whole matter, and at a forum that was inappropriate.
Why was it inappropriate? He was speaking to other
He was speaking to his staff.
Yes.
And he expected them to clap hands for him. I real clapped hands for him. that was another thing that was unfortunate. Because you are telling your people you've done nothing wrong. But instead of telling them you've done nothing wrong, you are telling them why that thing has happened. You see. And they know they always have to defend themselves. If I'm a customs officer, I tell them I'm corrupt, will I agree that I'm corrupt? So why wouldn't they clap hands for him? You see, so I think that was inappropriate. The appropriate place was to address his concerns to the Office of Special Prosecutor through the Commissioner General. These things, allegations are not true. These are the basis. Or even want to hold a press conference, fine. But explain, deal with the issues and not the individual. And whether he's a small boy or he's an old man, he has been appointed by the president. You two have been appointed by the president. You are equal at that level. Only that you are playing different roles. So if he's playing a role, it doesn't matter his age. You have to respect him as such. And you see, government institutions should not be having conflict with each other. They should rather be able to work together. Because you are set up and paid by the taxpayer to protect the interests of the country. And example for customs and the Ghana Revenue Authority in particular. Revenue mobilization in this country is very important, most important. But customs is even more important because we tend to rely too much on the indirect taxes. So if customs is closed down for one day, the amount of money that we will lose is not simple. And then if some of these monies are passing through the hands of individuals, definitely we are losing. You know, you people were discussing the economy and all that. If you remove corruption from this country, half of the problems of this economy would have been solved. Corruption is one of the major things that has dragged us to where we are today. So you take loans to do certain things, and either you don't do them or you don't do them properly. At the end of the day, the whole country has to pay. So revenue mobilization is very important, and we need to deal with that. So I think that the Office of Special Prosecutor has initiated a process, and he's called for further investigations. And if the president is very serious about the fight against corruption and the revenue mobilization, he should take this matter up and do the investigation further. Because it is not only this incident. There are possibly several others out there that has not come to the public domain.
Well, he did say that he's expanding the scope.
Yes. So
the office said it's just expanding the scope to cover other things.
That's what we're hoping to see. And like you said, he has been working there for some time. Yes, we commend him for what he has done, but I want to say that it is too slow. The expectations of Ghanaians are not being met. You see, for these things, one, it's good to recover the monies, but we also expect either prosecution or recommendation of prosecution. And success will depend on number of investigations carried out, amount of money recovered, and number of successful prosecutions. Until we see that, the commendation is a bit still on the low side.
For you.
Yes.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Mr. Azim. Surini.
Well,
OSP is working.
Is he?
You tell me.
First of all, when I heard some time ago that the OSP was engaging in negotiations with people that it's suspected to have engaged in fraudulent activities, I was quite worried. I made my observation known to a few people because I didn't think the office should prioritize such negotiations over prosecutions. Yes, there's a need to retrieve funds for the state, but that can be done through prosecutions as well. And I will want to see the OSP more active when it comes to prosecuting people and retrieving funds through the prosecution instead of just sitting around the table and negotiating terms of retrievals. I think it is dangerous. It can be abused by people working with the OSP or even in the OSP's office. I mean, if you find Godfrey to be corrupt, it is not for the OSP to determine the kind of negotiations to have with Godfrey to retrieve the funds for the state. I think through prosecution, that can be established in court. And that may be, more insulated from abuse than just giving the OSP that liberal way of negotiating with perceived wrongdoers. So I was worried until I saw this report, on La Bianca. It was one of the companies I knew or I heard that the OSP was negotiating with and talking to find out if they could make good some, payments that were due to the state that they may have avoided. So at least on the case of La Bianca, my fear that it may be abused so far has not been realized. I don't know if other things may have happened. That perhaps is why some people are angry that after all the engagements, there is still a report seeking to indict them or something. I don't know if some things may have happened. Some agreements of some sort may have taken place and perhaps this was not supposed to even become public knowledge. But however you look at it, it's commendable that we all now know that this happened and some refunds were made or some payments were made. But you see, the part of the OSP's release that for me is where we must focus on, is the call on us and especially the state to investigate the actions and the activities of people within the GRA. I mean, it has been
do you have it in front of you?
Sorry?
Do you have it in front of you?
The
OSP's report. Do you have it?
No, well, I have it. I have a copy.
Okay, I just wanted you to read that paragraph if you had it.
No, I don't have. I have not highlighted that paragraph, no, but I know that he says that we must do some more investigation, and that's why Colonel Damois is even upset about he's saying they should do more investigation. He's ready for investigation and all of that. Yes, that portion I think is in the second or third paragraph where he says that we must look at the operations of the GRA carefully. I'm saying that it has been a long-standing issue. I mean, Professor Mills, God bless his soul, when he was president, had to even go to the port, to appeal to people, in a very strong way to desist from some of the very negative activities that they were engaged in. And especially this time when we're all complaining about the shortfalls in our revenue, it's been an issue that every government has faced. And people will tell you that if we fix our problems at the port, and with Ghana Revenue Authority, we will be making a lot of gains as far as our revenue is concerned. And I agree when it is said even around this table that if we do that, we'll be fixing corruption, and that is also what is going to contribute to our revenue growth to meet the shortfalls that we have. Look, I know of issues that are going on at the GRA, and it's not just the Slabianka case. Early this year, my attention was drawn to some infighting between, the commissioner and the director of commission in charge of operations, Joseph, I think the name is Joseph Eduche, and the commissioner general, over markdown and discounts that he had, given to some companies. And the commissioner general wanted to punish him for giving those markdowns and discounts to the companies against, according to the commissioner, the laid down procedures and against the act of GRA. Now, they went back and forth, and I have all the letters they wrote to each other. And you had the commissioner, in charge of operations, deputy commissioner in charge of operations, defending, his decisions to grant these markdowns, to companies, and also citing instances where the commissioner himself had granted same. The commissioner himself had granted same. Despite all of that, he was still interdicted. The chair was still interdicted. A board committee had to be set up to look into this matter. As we speak, the report of that committee has not been made public because my sources show that it indicts even the commissioner general too. And meanwhile, the board on 20th December 2021, I think as part of their attempt to address some of these, granting of markdowns and things to companies, issued a memo. And I'll just share a copy of the memo with you. It's dated 20th December 2021 to the commissioner, CD. From the acting head, he said that please find below the key decisions of the 6th ordinary board meeting held on 16 December 2021 for your immediate action. 1. Granting discounts in customs valuations. No discounts should be given on any item or product with immediate effect, and this directive should be communicated across all sectors of customs division. This was in 2021. All existing approved discounts which are running should be cancelled with immediate effect. Commissioner Customs should submit letters on all discounts granted to companies from January 2021 up to date for the consideration of the board by 30th December 2021. And then you have Christmas package also addressed in there. I won't go into it because that's not related to what we are discussing. Yes.
Coincidentally, this particular memo was issued after the OSP wrote to the GRA in that same month.
Exactly.
Raising these issues.
Exactly. So that's why I'm saying that there's a need for us to investigate a lot of things around, these markdowns and the granting, because I've just told you the information available to me relating to the deputy commissioner in charge of operations and the commissioner general and the back and forth and the accusations and counter accusations, and how in the end it seems if indeed the commissioner general in charge of operations was guilty, then the commissioner general himself was also guilty of the same charge. So with all of that confusion going in there, how can you meet your revenue targets? In fact, I have filed a question in Parliament, which was supposed to be an urgent question, which was never tabled before we rose, to find out what the Finance Ministry was doing about these issues at GRA. Because you see, apart from the corruption that is, preventing government from realizing its revenue targets, you also have the impact on businesses and companies who are unable to even clear their goods and are forced sometimes to pay bribes because they are uncertain about the way their goods will be approached, because the discretionary powers of people there are just that vast. And you have all of this also impacting on prices of goods when they eventually, struggle to pay bribes and massage people's egos to get their goods out. And so that is the part of the OSP's, report that I think the state must pay attention to. If it requires a special investigation to be conducted into the operations of GRA, we must, implement that as soon as possible.
And I guess this also feeds into the point you just made. If I come to Dr. Chibodako, with the response that we've heard from the freight forwarders, for instance, and Mr. Wingobit's outfit as well, where they cite Section 12 of the Customs Act, which allows for the customs advance ruling, and you talk about the discretion that is there. And I guess that is where the OSP's point also has been made, that there is actually no laid down structured format for this. If you ask for it today, how do you decide on CAR? It depends on whether Dr. Chibudaku is working on Monday, or whether Suhini is working on Tuesday, or whether Vitas Azim is working on Wednesday.
I mean, you find, for example, Che, what's the name, Eduche, backing his decisions on Section 67 of the Act, and saying that he's allowed to do what he has done, apart from accusing the Director General of also doing same in the past.
Anyway, Dr. Chibudaku, your thoughts on this? You must be delighted. The OSP was a significant promise to put a dent. I always choose you can't end corruption, but you can put a dent in corruption.
I think it's a significant mark of achievement, especially considering the fact that this government said they are committed to fighting corruption, and that led to the setting up of the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Resources have been dedicated to this office. It's unfortunate that when it started in the beginning, we really didn't seem to be seeing any headway or progress. So this is evidence of work that is being done, that resources are being put to good use. There's a lot of loopholes in the system, and we've discussed it over and over again, that need to be sealed. And the fact that we can't go outside with all the downgrades to go and borrow anymore means that we need to conserve what we have here. So how are we going to do that? Honorable Suhini, that's one of the lights at the end of the tunnel that you didn't see. It's a bright light. We need to conserve what we have here.
It's a dim light.
Exactly. It's not dim. I think it's significant. And if you look at the people involved in it, that the Special Prosecutor had courage to bring it out, a member of the Council of State, etc. And the report is out there. I think that is even more significant, that it's not about the fact that the Special Prosecutor is investigating people on the opposition or something, but that this is something they deem necessary to bring out. It shows the commitment and the serious fight about the seriousness with the government in saying that we're going to fight corruption. And it is very timely, because this is when we need to start now looking inward and coming together and saying what you want to do. But that said, whoever is affected also has a right to speak out. So you can't also say that you should keep quiet because what they have said, implicates you. But I think we just have to be very careful and decorous in then how you go forward to speak out, so that you don't personalize the issues that you want to speak about. And that said, I wouldn't say anymore. So I support the Office of the Special Prosecutor in doing what they have to do. Is that your mandate? Yes, that is your mandate. So let's see more of that happening. If that is what is going to help us conserve our very little revenue that we want to keep within the
And you see, maybe Godfred, I don't think that we should, no matter how pedestrian it may have been, and I think it was pedestrian, the reaction by Colonel Delmore, but we should not entirely dismiss it, because you see, we don't want our offices to be used as, vindictive, offices. So that is why I think that the special prosecutor must live above reproach. And if it focuses more on prosecutions and doing so without, regard to who is involved, it will gradually send that sense to people that it doesn't matter whether for example, if the special prosecutor has a bone to pick with Mr. Colonel Damoy, and then he comes to his office and doesn't find anything, wrong, he will have nothing to write about, So that is neither here nor there. But that should not also be discounted, because the special prosecutor's office is a human institution. But we need to encourage it. That is why I was worried when I heard that they were just simply engaging with companies that had defaulted in making certain payments, so that those companies could make payments to the state and let them go. Because we have seen these things in the past where people have taken advantage to also negotiate, for themselves. And that is also even happening at GRA. They will tell you, GRA officers will tell you that your tax liability is, say, 100 million, but I can make you pay maybe 30 million if you can give me 2 million, and then it will go away. So let us not give the Office of Special Prosecutor that opportunity to also perhaps abuse, these negotiations.
So surcharge and prosecute.
Surcharge, prosecute, and let the law courts, if there are any retrievals to be made, be the one leading those retrievals. And I think that is what we should be encouraging the special prosecutor to do. And I believe that the special prosecutor can even expand its investigations into the operations of GRA, especially given some of the issues that I have raised. They shouldn't just focus on only La Bianca. They must, expand the scope of the investigation. And I think they will find more than they have revealed to us so far.
But Mr. Azim, I'll come to you in a bit. I want to explain something before, because I'll soon be speaking to the freight forwarders, because the reason why this might not go away anytime soon is the confidence of the freight forwarders and importers in believing that what they do is in the right, in the sense of how the customs advanced ruling, the CR, is applied. So and a lot of people have been asking me what it is. So I was just going to spend a few minutes to try and explain what it is before I conduct my chat with the Chamber of Freight and Trade and their president, Dennis Anfusefa, who will soon become available to me. So if you can give me a few minutes, I'll get to you. So on the advanced ruling, it says that traders face the challenge of unexpected application of unfavorable regulations while importing or exporting, and or the risk of liability to unforeseen customs duties and taxes during clearance of their imports. This has a direct impact on their profitability, since there is no predictability, which is vital for assuring sustainability of their business. Additionally, importers and exporters are often confronted with inconsistent classification, valuation, and origin decisions depending on which customs officer is working on their imports, since customs operates rotating allocation of appraisal officers. This leads to uncertainty in the entire trade transaction, as these different decisions have an impact on the amount of duty and taxes to be paid, and ultimately on the price of the product in the importing country, which is the point Suhini was making. This uncertainty can lead to legal disputes on tariff, valuation, and origin, leading to additional costs for the parties involved and delays for customs revenue collection. There is therefore the need for the application of trade facilitation tools so that the customs procedures on valuation, origin, and classification can be applied in a predictable, transparent, and reasonable manner so as to facilitate trade. Customs advanced ruling, which is the CAR that has become very popular this week. The customs advanced ruling provides avenue for decisions on classification, valuation, and origin or other customs processes prior to importation or exportation. These are legally binding customs decisions at the time of clearance thus adding certainty and predictability to trade and helping traders to make informed business decisions based on legally binding rulings. Advance rulings are binding decisions by customs at the request of a trader on specific particulars in relation to the intended importation or exportation of goods. Advanced rulings can be requested with regard to classification, origin, or customs value of the goods in preparation for importation or exportation. Advanced rulings facilitate the declaration and consequently the release and clearance process as critical elements in relation with the goods that have already been made in the advanced rulings. Advanced rulings are binding throughout customs territories at all customs offices and valid for a specific period of time, example 3 months or 1 year. Now, let's deal with the implementation in Ghana. Now, the designated competent authority in the implementation of provisions of Section 12 of Act 891 on advance ruling is the Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority. Since the enactment of the Customs Act 2015, Act 891, incorporating provisions of advance ruling, the Customs Division has failed to implement the guidelines prescribed in the technical guidelines. Among others, the Customs Division has also failed to design a structured format, both electronic and hard copy, for importers and exporters to apply for a binding decision. They have failed to publish the requirements for the application for an advance ruling, including the information to be provided and the format. There is no unit at the Customs Division dedicated to the implementation of this all-important trade facilitation tool. Now, according to what I'm reading, as currently constituted, the Customs Division has not met the minimum threshold for implementation of advance ruling in Ghana, save for incorporating its provisions in Act 891. The Customs Division has successfully linked advance ruling to the benchmark valuation policy, which is an issue that is also there. Says that the biggest challenge facing the Customs Division today is the control of declared customs values and tackling suspected undervaluation. Given that duty rates are ad valorem, accurate determination of customs value is critical for ensuring optimal revenue collection. For the determination of customs value, the division applies the principles of the World Trade Organization's Customs Valuation Agreement based on Article 7 of GATT 1994. And then goes on to talk about how Ghana has acceded to this and all. Now, the Customs Division has committed itself to the observance of the principles as enshrined in the agreement and the Customs Act amid some challenges. In a bid to address some of these challenges, after implementing the agreement over the years, the Customs Division rolled out the benchmark valuation policy aimed at tackling suspected undervaluation in some selected high-risk commodities. The benchmark valuation policy was established as an effective approach to controlling and verifying declared transaction values of selected high-risk and revenue-sensitive commodities imported into the country. Its objective is to aid officers in the formation of an opinion on the acceptability of the declared customs values. It is a structured database of validated reference values for selected commodities for the use of customs officers. Then on the operation, so the selected commodities and reference values are contained in a document provided for use by customs valuation officers. Where a declaration bears a selected commodity, valuation officers verifies the declared free on-board price value against the reference values of the commodity based on the detailed goods description. The officer compares the declared and the assessed values, and if found to be consistent, it is validated for the process to continue. Goes on to say that the applicant should attach a copy of the ruling to applicable entry documents. Now, on this particular matter, while this policy was being, let me just start from the benchmark. So the benchmark value, which was introduced in 2019, I'm sure Suini is aware of this. Was this passed in Parliament? Was it passed in Parliament? The benchmark value?
There's no law on it.
There's no law on it.
There's no law on it.
This policy was introduced by the government in April 2019 in an attempt to make the port competitive, increase government revenue, etc. The policy provided for a discount of 50% on the benchmark values of imports of goods and 30% on imports of vehicles. Now, while this policy was being implemented, some importers often applied to the customs division with invoice values for frozen poultry far lower than the 50% discount value on goods. After rejecting these lower invoice values, the customs division went ahead to reduce the already 50% discounted value by another 10%. This went on for a long time for some particular importers. The decision to reduce the discounted value by another 10% was communicated to the importer in writing, and the customs division terms this as advance ruling. And that's also to say that it is worth noting that this practice is not grounded in the Customs Act or any other law in force. This is clearly an exercise of discretion to reduce the customs value of imports against the enshrined provisions on customs valuation under Section 66-69 of the Customs Act. So I was just reading this to provide some education. And to continue the conversation, I've been joined by Samson Asaki Awingobit, Executive Secretary at Importers and the Exporters Association, on the line. Mr. Awingobit, good morning. As always, a pleasure to speak to you.
Good morning, and good morning to your general listeners, and it's always a pleasure to meet you as well.
So this week we've had the OSP enter your terrain by saying that La Bianca has been doing something that it considers illegal, and so surcharged La Bianca to pay back $1 million Ghana cedis and more. Your outfit came out and said, well, what this is actually standard practice. The OSP seems to disagree on that matter. Has the week and the engagements that have come forth changed your mind on the customs advance ruling and its application and its legality or not?
Well, thank you very much, and good morning to your guest in the studio there. I think I've seen my senior brother, Vice President, I think last week. I was sometimes we spoke about it, and I was also called to, I think, GBC behind the nation, so I was also called to discuss the issue. I must say that as we were reading to educate the public, that is the most important thing that all of us need to do, to educate the public about how the port handles work is done and how the customs policies and procedures are done at the port. And of course, we use the opportunity to build on why we think that the business person in question has not breached any law. In any case, let me start from this. I am an importer. We from Importer and Exporter Association would have distanced ourselves from this issue if the Special Prosecutor had said or investigation had unraveled that this person that I am investigating, we realize that she's buying cargo from her supplier. Let's as an assumption at $3,000 per container or per container. Now you pay freight. If you buy it, that's the FOB price. Now you will have to add freight. Freight, let's take it, he has paid about, let's say, $2,000. So meaning the landing cost at Temaport, the CIS, FOB price plus freight will give you, let's say, that's $5,000, isn't it? Because if you buy the product at $3,000, you pay free for $2,000. That means you have to declare exactly how much you are buying, you are getting the commodity from the supplier, plus the freight. You submit your documents, packing leaves, invoices, anything that needed you to show to you that truly this is how I bought it. Now, based on that, custom officer assessed you. So let's take it in this way. Maybe the woman came and said, look, when you did the custom, or when you was presenting a document for them to assess, for her to pay her duties, she is saying that, oh, I bought it 2,000 instead of 3,000. That means you know, knowing that it's 3,000, but you have to tell the custom that it's 2,000 bought it. There may be free. You have paid $2,000. They declare that I paid $1,000 or $1,500. Meaning, this person is hiding something. If the person is investigating, goes back to discover that no, this commodity that was assessed by customs and she paid the duty was actually 3,000 was taken from the supplier. But when you pay before the custom officer or uniform officer or public officer, you defeat the person. You know what you are doing. You pay fee of 2,000, but on your declaration, you make them answer look like you are paying $1,005 to bring your cost of freight, which is also not true. That means you are trying to dodge or evade that. That one, we important associations would have said, oh no, how? You know it. As an importer, you are the one who goes to buy the goods. You know the actual price that you are getting. So why do you start to defeat public officers? That is totally criminal. That is total tax evasion. That's why tax evasion is. But if I go to buy my goods, bring my invoices, my everything, submit to an uniform officer or for that the tax authority to assess me and let me pay it, and you assess me, and based on my volume, you have to also understand this. Based on my volume, based on me being tax compliant, my risk is very low, and GRA wants me to bring more, and the uniform GRA, they have that discretionary power to give me 6 or 5 to 10%. I will go and pay my duty. If the uniform men have said that, look, you deceive us and you again ask for, or you deceive us and we again gave you another 5 to 10%, then that would have been totally criminal. But if I subject that, there's nowhere to read in the report that shows that when it was declared, they are not declared. Or unless I didn't understand the English, and I don't understand the English. Is there any of the report on the 4-page point, bulletin point that the outline, saying that there was an declarer somewhere? Did you see something like that?
No.
Good. So where is the tax evasion here? So if I were to, if the person to say actually what they asked to really applaud him, if I were to the person to that, I would rather charge the officer who gave discretionary powers if you think that you need the law. No? He was not qualified education. Then citizen put card as my colleague Dennis was saying elsewhere. I don't think anywhere in the report the person pointed out that he called the person, he sent a message or whatever, he said, you must give me. Is there anything stated in the report like that? No. So where is the lady's crime here? I am a business person. Every business person wants to make profit. It is not easy to establish business in this country, my brother. It is not easy. As people put in their nose, popping. Look, let me tell you honestly. Unless they are looking for somebody at GRA there, it is not a woman. Unless someone wants the candles and the district commissioner to go and they appoint somebody. Because if you read the report, the Special is saying that because he was sitting at some point, the Special is saying that because he was sitting as a board member at GPA, GPA is Ghana Port Health Authority, isn't it? And because he is a council of state member, he used that to influence. That is where I say, is the council or is there something that someone sitting at 7 as board member at GPA can influence someone at GRA? This lady was not at a board member at GRA, where you and I would have agreed that maybe because she was a member at GRA and I gave a member of council of state, maybe the uniform people needed some favor from her or whatever, maybe in terms of promotion or whatever, and did that for her so that maybe she can go, if there's any promotion, they can talk on behalf of them. But this person was actually the kind of Port and Health Authority says, pay taxes to the state. And it's the same authority, GRA, assess them to pay taxes. GRA assess Ghana Port. Every month, they have to take corporate tax, pay the PUI taxes to the state. Through the same GRA. Now, are you telling me that the uniform officer who has worked for over 30 years or 20-something years does not understand their laws? They are the same people who give their management act to their minister, and the minister goes to power to get it done for them, and they are implemented. We haven't been working, haven't been trained officers. Then the officers working at the port has to report us. Because if this deputy commissioner is not any mere officer of the GRA, at the time, Colonel Damwa is a former military officer. Even though when he was appointed, the finance minister went to parliament to get clearance for him to wear the uniform. He says he will not wear the uniform. So in terms of uniform, technical competence at the GRA at the time, those who understand the work. The highest ranking officer at the time is the commissioner of executive commissioner of customs. That is Mr. Eduche. So Mr. Eduche, who has been there for several years now, was an AC, became the commissioner in charge of operations. They have to understand that the laws of the GRA, which they have been using for several years now. Now that's why I asked the question. If someone is using his position to settle, so then why didn't they, and that is just conflict of interest or whatever, to invade? Why didn't the Special Prosecutor go to Minister of Finance, who went to Parliament some time ago and was posed a question that since he became the Minister of Finance, his bank, Data Bank, anytime the finance minister is going for loan, and of course, anytime Ghana's government is going for loan or grant and whatever, it is Data Bank that always come and sit as financial advisor. The finance minister will tell it on air, it's on record, and I'm sure Citi you can get the place for 50 years. They have been serving as financial advisor. They've been getting money. Who is the finance minister? What is he to the Data Bank? What is he to the Data Bank? So if people are in their office and they are political influence to carry, then you go to finance minister too and go and collect our Ghanaian money that Data Bank has been enjoying for several years. Because if the floor of Parliament is a house of records, the question was posed to the finance minister. He told us Ghanaians how much money the Data Bank has made. And other asset members of the government, we know, have been assigned as legal officers, have been mingling as financial advisors, and all these institutions have been getting money through and from the people of Ghana. Then that is influence. That's settling. Unless there's something from somebody wants somebody to go out of the GRA there, I think that they're looking for Canada to be put out of that place. And they want to use this to disgrace them, to embarrass them. But they cannot disgrace them.
But Mr. Wingobit, hold on for me.
Is that the first time that an importer has been given such a facility? Is it the first time?
No, hold on. Let me ask you a couple of questions just before you go on.
Go ahead.
Again, your position on the matter seems to be a matter of this is what we if I may ask you, the fact that it is common practice, does that mean that it cannot be illegal?
It is. Look, we are not trading. Ghana does not trade on its own. We are trading with international communities.
No, I'm not saying. Hold on. My question is a very specific question.
I want to give you a specific answer. We are signatory to WCO when customers when you see the response by Eduche, he made references to World Customs Organization.
Mm-hmm.
World Customs Organization is certain best practice. It's giving. It is not only Ghana. It's everywhere. The highest percentage, they have highest percentage, but they gave within 5 to 10%. What is the other fault that the Special Prosecutor provided that somehow convincing me and you is that, okay, for someone to get this, Custom Act the same, apply, bring in application letter. Is that not it? Submit your invoices, your documentations, your laboratory analysis. If you read the report, he raised these issues there. But again, the custom also has discretionary powers. Yet we know that once your volumes are coming, once you are tax compliant, once your risk is very low, and you have volumes, one can apply to custom to say, look, beginning maybe November, between October to November, you can apply to government. Say, look, from January.
But is that not where? Hold on. Is that not where the Special Prosecutor then is saying then that you can apply, but there seems to be a conflation of whether this is a CAR or a benchmark value, and also the use of that particular discretion perhaps has been abused and has been expanded beyond what is the norm. And so I want to look at this. And then secondly, if you can add this, if this was the norm, why did LaBianca agree to pay?
Exactly. Of course. If was when she submitted her documents to the GRA and they asked her and asked her to pay, she wanted to pay the debt at the time, was there 5 to 10%? Yes, there was. That's the bonus for them. So how much was the amount? It's running to 1 million plus. I think it's about 200 or something. If you divide it by the number, I think about 2,000 Ghana cedis or 2,000 plus Ghana cedis, count the number, that makes 1 million to pay. Now, question is, who gave you? Is the GRA officers. But the woman has been generous enough to say, okay, I'll pay. If that's the case, I'll pay. I'll tell her.
She's being generous? Is that what you're saying? She's being generous to say she'll pay?
If they were to be like me, I would have said, I didn't force them to give to me. So the one who gave to me, then go after them for your money. Because are you telling me that if the commissioner at the time, had assessed more than, so let's put it this perspective, had assessed more than the 1 million certificate was over 2 million, and Labeca had paid, and Labeca now realized that no, the way I was assessing that paid is this: the government of Ghana through customs, they collected me so much. So she was going to court. He was still going to take education to court. She was going to take GRA to court. And for that matter, she was taking GRA to court to get her money. It was the chief executive officer of GRA is the commissioner of customs and is the commissioner general. Because its budget is presented, the domestic tax has a target, the customs division has a target. At the end of the day, if they met their target and exceeded, the commissioner general comes to face the media and tell how much his men and women have done well and applaud them. So if you're accepting accept liabilities, why was this? Even though if you read the Special Prosecutor, the Special Prosecutor said that the Commissioner General was not in notice. That's the word to use. Am I right? Good. But you know that all the men in uniform, even at you sit at Citi FM, if any GRA officer bounces your office there to say you people are not paying taxes and close down your office, the person is acting based on the power he's drawing from the Commissioner General. If I were to say Special Prosecutor, I wouldn't have concluded my report in that way. I would have invited the Commissioner General to also hear from him and to also know whether if this exercise has been there, if they've been using this, then they are doing it. Why was it not interviewed? Why was the Commissioner General not interviewed?
Hold on. You seem to have a lot more information about the setup of what, but my focus this morning is on the process, which seems to be what has brought about this. Because if the Special Prosecutor says, I'm expanding this, you obviously will be affected because you work in that space. But I want to ask you a final question. If the process was not such a problem, why then this board memo that came in December, which basically asked that no discount should be given on any item or product with immediate effect, and that all existing approved discounts which are running should be cancelled? What was the purpose of that memo from the board of GRA?
December 2021, December 2022.
December 2021.
2019.
2021.
Good. So it means that so many people were enjoying discount, and the GRA is not meeting its target. The GRA needed more money, and for that matter, they realized that no, giving so much discount out is not going to help the country, is not going to help the authority. So please, henceforth, management or the board want more revenue to calculate. Is there any problem with that?
But per your point, if that is the norm, why then cut it? Which is why the Special Prosecutor is telling you that that particular process needs to be regulated because it is being abused.
Thank you. So now, if the Special Prosecutor report there says that, okay, from now, we think I'm advising that GRA to expunge that that discretion that a custom officer or GRA officer can exercise. Look, I'm telling you, not if you even go, maybe even into the domestic taxes, you will see other companies going to GRA to tell them, look, this tax is doing me, I have challenged it. That has maybe do something for me. If this one, then everybody in this country will found culpable. Not only one person. I'm telling you, just as you are saying about Harbour. If the Special Prosecutor to say you will zoom into it, then many importers will be implicated in this.
Well, is that not why then the importers are worried? Because perhaps he does need to look into it.
No, that's what I'm saying. We are not saying that if that is being abused, we shouldn't put a test to it. That's what we are saying. But I'm saying that if the report, my issue is, If the report had shown that this, after the investigation, some people should have realized that the Nigerian company presented documents to customs to assess the safety, knowing that they were getting the supplier at, they were getting goods from the supplier at this amount. He has paid free this amount. But in declaring for customs to assess to pay HCT, he underdeclared. That's completely robbery and thievery. There's no way in the report. Point it to me. Point it to me. And of course, GRA Customs Division has a target to me. So if at the time the deputy commissioner was the deputy commissioner in charge of operations, and the GRA need more money, and said the person bring more volume, and they think, oh, if we keep within our discussion power, if we keep it, it will bring more cargo so that we can get more revenue from the person. Why not? If today, when the person is not saying that it is wrong, that is why the person go and pay the money.
Your point is well made, Samson. I think you've explained, you've provided the education I wanted to know. Thank you very much, Samson Asaki Awingobit, General Secretary of the Importers and Exporters. I think he has explained where they feel the difference in. So I'll just take a quick break, come back, and then do Vitus, Suhini, and then Dr. Chibudako, and then we'll wrap this up.
Not 30, not even 40, but 50 years in ministry. Joyful Way Incorporated specially invites you to our Golden Jubilee musical concert in celebration of our story, impact, and legacy. Guest artists Benjamin Dube from South Africa, the veteran Ghanaian gospel trio Daughters of Glorious Jesus, Minister Joe Metal. Date Saturday 3rd September. Venue Forecourt, State House. Tickets, simply come with a grateful heart. It's free. Time 5:30 p.m. The Jubilee concert is proudly sponsored by Citi FM, Relevant Radio, always. Citi TV, it's your world. Joyful Way at 50. Come join us, make a joyful noise of the Lord's salvation.
Welcome back to the big issue. So you heard Samson Asaki Awingobit, General Secretary at the Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana. Vitus, he also has explained from their perspective why they feel that no wrong has been done. And he has also explained a scenario where wrong could be done, but they don't see it with this particular scenario.
I think that they shouldn't have come up immediately to start defending the company. The company was accused of doing wrong. They don't have the detailed facts about the case. And I don't think that the special prosecutor would have done a shoddy investigation. He would have asked the necessary questions. What does the law say? Was the law breached? Were there any favors asked for? How did the company present itself? Was it the Council of State member that went to the commissioner and asked for a favor? Was a favor granted? Did any money change hands? I mean, was the commissioner compelled? Was there any compulsion in asking the commissioner for the favor? So we should look at it from the corruption perspective. You should look at it this way. What led to the grant? Was it a favor? And I believe it was a favor. And that's why they agreed to pay the money. What went into the grant of the favor? Who represented the company at the negotiations? If the lady
was it influenced by the position?
Yes, if the lady wanted to introduce herself as the Council of State member and as a member of the board, that alone was enough. But even if she didn't go, but somebody went and said, look, I'm representing the Council of State member on this company. And I think that as a Council of State member, you need to give the favor. And I believe that the Office of Special Prosecutor would have looked at these things before actually coming out with that. Influence peddling. People misunderstand it to mean that you are working in the institution, you can just say you'll be demoted or promoted. I can go to someone and say, look, I'm the president's brother. So, Godfrey, I'm the president's brother. You must do this for me. The fellow may not even be related to the president. He might not even have any power to do anything to you. But he's exploiting a situation, knowing that we are in a system that people fear the authorities and that the man is appointed by the president. And go say, I'm the council state member. And the commissioner may grant this. Did it happen? No, we don't know. You see, as for the benchmark law, like we said, it's not in the law. It is a regulation that customs uses. And where there is a lot of discretion and the withholding of information from the public, the discretion can always be abused. And I believe this is what the commissioner and the Office of Special Prosecutor suspected or found out. And it was supported by the fact that the company agreed and paid the money. They did not dispute. They could have gone to court. They didn't do that. So why are we disputing this? If the association has other cases, they should raise them. But they shouldn't use this. They shouldn't defend this particular case. I think that it's not right for them to defend this case. And if you say it's a norm, so if things have been the norm and it's bad, we should continue to tolerate it. No way. So armed robbery is rampant in the country. Should we just close our eyes to armed robbery because people are unemployed and they need money to eat?
Your take on the perspective of the importers and exporters?
First of all, I think that it's
Mr. Awigobit has given us a dose of reality.
I'll get to his submission, but it's also important for us to question the background of the Commissioner General and the 3 other commissioners around him.
Oh, you are still there?
It's important. It's very important. Because for me, based on what I know, they are the biggest problem as far as this matter is concerned. And so it's important for us to even find out how they got to where they are. And that for me also speaks to the way we appoint people, to certain portfolios in this country. The chronism and just, they're even supposed to be on retirement.
These are important jobs that they
you understand, but that's not even, that's not the focus. I think Asaki has raised a number of issues. And to some extent, I agree with some of the points that, he has raised. Like I said in the initial stages, I think that the emphasis of the conversation should be on GRA. Even as we pay attention to La Bianca, we must also focus on GRA because they have the loopholes. And like Asaki is saying, and if the loopholes exist for businesses to, take advantage of, they will take advantage of. And from his narration, it's as if maybe she wouldn't have even known that it's an advantage that is offered to her. And when through investigations, her attention was drawn to the fact that she was offered those favors, she agreed to pay back. And that's why Asaki would say she was just being generous. I don't think that she was being generous, but I don't think that she didn't even know. I think that she also just abused the powers and the authorities that she has. But I'm saying our focus should not be on her. The focus should be on GRA. And we need to expand the scope of the investigation so that we can look at all the other issues that are coming up relating to abuse of whatever, what do you call it, formula is used to grant some of these markdowns. And we also need to insulate the Office of the Special Prosecutor from abusing its powers and possibly using it to carry out vindictive measures or enter into agreements that they are not supposed to enter into. If we had time, I would have just shared a portion of Ediche's letter to you, with you. And it is interesting. I mean,
I'll give, if you can go do that in 2 minutes that I wrap up with Dr. Thibault.
So I'll just share a portion, and maybe 4 paragraphs. It says, there was an earlier memo captioned Key Directives of the SIF Ordinary Board Meeting of the 14th Board held on 16 December 2021, copy attached. In that said letter, emphasis was placed on discontinuation of discount, which in customs we refer to as markdown, where necessary and appropriately. I take the opportunity of the query to explain the technical nature of customs valuation. In the early stages of CTSB, there was no price database, so 71 line items, now 81, that were heavily smuggled were listed with standard values, referred to as benchmark values. So you see the history of these benchmark values as a risk tool for internal consumption. So they just set this up to check smuggling. Then he goes on to say that the intention was that such invoices should not fall below benchmark values. Either such invoices were raised or uplifted to BMVs. WTO has outlawed the use of benchmark values as arbitrary and inimical to international trade. Instead, in Section 12 of Act 891, we have advanced ruling for classification, valuation, and origin of goods. In order to be fair to frozen cargo, the then Commissioner General, through Commissioner of Customs Division, issued between 5% and 12% markdown, that's discount, for using the BMVs. Some BMVs have elements of buying commission which make them very high. So he goes on to say in Section 67, GRA Customs is to go by the GATT 6 in Roman numerals, agreements on valuation to accept transaction value method or invoice transaction value of identical goods, transaction value of similar goods, deductive method, computed method, and fallback method. So he's giving you the methods that they use in calculating all of this. I can see you do not have time. But the point that he's making here is something that you cannot ignore. So it is about practice, it's about regulations, and it's about conventions. And the OSP is raising how those practice, conventions, and regulations have been abused over the years. And I'm sure that is what resulted in even the board giving a directive that all of these should be cancelled. So it is time for us to begin to look at, I think that the turf war between the commissioners have given us an opportunity to look at the discretions and the abuses which are impacting negatively on businesses. Because the private businesses that are importing, like I said earlier, sometimes have to resort to unconventional means to get their goods out at competitive prices. And that is unacceptable.
All right. Point well made. I can't give you a minute. The minute goes to her.
I think that for me, this is timely and it coincides with the fact that our Honorable Parliament has passed the tax exemptions bill. Let's see some proper regulatory framework come into these places to enhance the government's policy to say that we are going to raise domestic revenue. Because if you are going to raise domestic revenue, and as you raise revenue by taxing more people, you are also exempting more people and allowing discretion and etc., you are actually shooting yourself in the foot. So this, I think, is where we are going. And rightly said, the tax exemptions bill, the regulation is going to bring the monitoring, the control and abuse of the existing regime and etc. I think these are steps in the right direction. And for me, it's a positive.
That's what we'll look forward to. I am solidly backing the OSP's move to have a structured format for deciding some of these things, so that when Suhini goes to clear what he wants to clear and he's charged 1 cedi for it, I go and clear the same thing. I'm also charged 1 cedi for it, not because on that day Dr. Chibudako is working. My name is Godfred Akutubafo. Thank you very much to all my guests, and thank you for watching as well. Have a good weekend.